How dare you show your face in this establishment after the scandal you caused?
You are an embarrassment. I suggest you leave immediately before security is called.
The text message glowed on my phone screen like a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. Victor's 65th celebration is family only. You are not welcome. Don't embarrass us by trying to attend. My mother's words. Cold. Final. As if 12 years of silence hadn't already said everything. I sat in my penthouse office, 40 stories above the city, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the skyline like a painting I'd commissioned myself. Architectural plans for my newest resort in Monaco were spread across my minimalist desk, each line representing months of vision, negotiation, triumph. But none of it mattered in that moment. Because family, no matter how toxic, no matter how wrong, still had the power to make you feel small. My name is Marina Castellane. I'm 36 years old, and I own 29 luxury hotels across 4 continents. I employ over 8,000 people. Last year, my company generated $400 million in revenue. Forbes called me the invisible titan of luxury hospitality. Invisible, because I prefer it that way. Because the world doesn't need to see my face to experience my vision. But my family. They think I'm a struggling restaurant manager barely making rent. I picked up my phone and texted my executive assistant. Sophie, confirm my reservation. The Glass Pavilion. 8 p.m. 3 dots appeared immediately. Are you sure about this? She wrote back. Sophie knew everything. She'd been with me since the beginning, when I was sleeping in a studio apartment and building my first boutique hotel with maxed-out credit cards and pure determination. She understood what tonight meant. I've never been more sure of anything, I typed. Because my father's 65th birthday celebration wasn't just happening anywhere. It was happening at the Meridian. My hotel. The flagship property of Castellane Resort Collective. The building I personally renovated 6 years ago, the space I designed with my own hands, the business I built from nothing after my family told me I'd never amount to anything. And they had no idea. The drive to the Meridian took 20 minutes through evening traffic. I chose a simple black town car, not the limousine I could have easily requested. I wore a charcoal dress, elegant but understated, minimal jewelry. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screamed wealth. I'd learned a long time ago that real power doesn't announce itself. It simply exists, patient and inevitable. The doorman recognized me instantly, his eyes widening just slightly before he schooled his expression into professional neutrality. Good evening, Miss Castellane, he murmured, opening my door. Good evening, James. Lovely weather tonight. Indeed it is. Enjoy your evening. I stepped into the golden hour light spilling across the marble entrance, and that's when I saw her. My sister Claudia, standing near the elevator bank like a sentry, her expression shifting from boredom to shock to something like vindictive pleasure in the span of a heartbeat. Marina. Her voice carried across the lobby, sharp enough to turn heads. What are you doing here? Mother said you wouldn't dare. I kept walking, my heels clicking against marble I'd personally selected from a quarry in Carrara. I have a reservation. Claudia moved to intercept me, her designer dress rustling. She'd always had our mother's sense of style, that old money aesthetic that screamed pedigree and breeding. At the Meridian. On a server's salary. She laughed, high and brittle. This is pathetic even for you. Something cold settled in my chest. Not anger. I'd moved past anger years ago. This was something calmer, more surgical. Is it? Marina, seriously, this membership costs more than you probably make in 6 months. You can't just walk in here because you saw an Instagram post about Dad's party. It's embarrassing. Before I could respond, I heard the click of familiar heels behind me. My mother's perfume reached me first, that same expensive French fragrance she'd worn my entire childhood. Marina. Marina Castellane's voice could have frozen water. This is inappropriate. This venue costs more than you make in a year. You can't just show up because you. I received an invitation, I said simply. My mother's perfectly composed face cracked just slightly. From whom? Certainly not family. We agreed when you chose that lifestyle, that you wouldn't impose on family gatherings. That lifestyle. As if choosing hospitality over their precious patent law firm had been a moral failing. As if building something beautiful with my own hands was somehow shameful. Claudia crossed her arms, blocking my path to the private elevator. She probably catered here once and thinks she's entitled to the amenities. Marina, you need to understand that this isn't your world. These people, this place, it's not for. Not for people like me. I finished. Is that what you were going to say? My mother stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. Don't make a scene. You've already embarrassed this family enough. Do you know how many times I've had to explain your situation to our friends? The daughter who threw away a law career to serve drinks. I could have told them right then. Could have ended it with a single sentence. But something in me wanted to wait. Wanted to see how far they'd take this. How completely they'd reveal themselves. I'm not serving drinks anymore, I said quietly. Claudia scoffed. Right? You said you were managing a small hotel. Which probably means assistant manager, at some highway motel. Marina, please. Have some dignity. Leave before someone we know sees you trying to crash Dad's party. I'm not crashing anything. Then prove you have a reservation, my mother challenged. Show me your membership card. Show me anything that proves you belong in a place like this. I moved toward the private elevator, the one that led to the glass pavilion on the 42nd floor. Claudia physically stepped in front of me, her hand on my arm. This elevator is for VIP guests only. Members. You need to leave before security. I am a member. Claudia's laugh was sharp enough to cut. Don't be ridiculous. The membership fee alone is $75,000 annually. You don't have that kind of money. You've never had that kind of money. My brother-in-law Julian appeared then, tall and distinguished in his custom suit. He worked for an investment bank, the kind of man who measured worth in quarterly earnings and stock portfolios. Is there a problem here? My sister is confused about her access level, Claudia said, her voice dripping with condescension. She seems to think she can just walk into the Meridian like she owns the place. The irony was so perfect I almost smiled. That's when I saw Marcos Delgado walking toward us, flanked by 2 security personnel. My head of operations, the man who'd been with me for 8 years, who'd helped me expand from 3 properties to 29. My mother saw them too, and relief flooded her face. Thank you for coming so quickly, Diana said to Marcos. My daughter was just leaving. Marcos's expression was perfectly neutral, but I saw the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. We'd discussed this possibility. I'd told him what might happen tonight, how my family might react. He'd offered to have me escorted up through a private entrance, but I'd refused. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. Mrs. Castellane, Marcos said, his voice professional and calm. I apologize for any confusion. Miss Castellane, your table is ready in the glass pavilion. I'll escort you personally. The lobby seemed to hold its breath. Claudia's face went through several expressions at once. There must be a mistake. She doesn't have a reservation in the pavilion. That's impossible. Marcos turned to me, one eyebrow slightly raised. Would you like me to explain, or? I'd waited 12 years for this moment. 12 years of building an empire in silence while my family assumed I'd failed. 12 years of Christmas dinners where I downplayed my success, of family gatherings I wasn't invited to, of being treated like an embarrassment. And now, standing in the lobby of my own hotel, surrounded by my own staff, facing the family that had written me off, I felt something like peace. Please do, Marcos. He turned to face my mother and sister, his posture straightening. Several hotel guests had stopped to watch, drawn by the tension. I recognized a few of them. Patricia Whitmore, the Society columnist who'd been trying to interview me for months. Thomas Chen, one of Claudia's law partners. Others from my father's world, witnesses to what was about to unfold. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcos began, his voice carrying across the marble lobby. I'm Marcos Delgado, head of operations for Castellane Resort Collective. Ms. Marina Castellane is the founder and CEO of our company, and the owner of the Meridian, along with 28 other luxury properties across 4 continents. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched my mother's face drain of color. Watched Claudia's mouth open and close soundlessly. Watched Julian's eyes go wide with recognition, with horror, with the sudden understanding of exactly how badly they'd miscalculated. That's impossible, my mother whispered. She's a restaurant manager. She told us she was managing a small hotel. I manage 29 of them, I said quietly. I didn't lie. You assumed. Thomas Chen stepped forward, his face pale. Wait. Your sister is Marina Castellane. The Castellane, who owns the building where our firm leases 15 floors. Claudia turned to him, her voice strangled. That's not possible. That can't be. Your firm has been my tenant for 3 years, I confirmed. Actually, you're below market rate. I approved that lease personally as a courtesy. Julian looked like he might be sick. The Castellane Collective is acquiring Montrose Bank. I've been working on the due diligence for months. You're the Castellane who's been reviewing our reports. The one who's been, he couldn't finish. Your work has been excellent, Julian, I said kindly. Very thorough. Patricia Whitmore was already on her phone, probably texting her editor. Marina darling, I didn't realize you were Victor's daughter. I've been trying to get an interview with you for months. Your resort in Santorini just won International Design of the Year. The crowd was growing now, hotel guests and party attendees drawn by the commotion. I could see the recognition spreading like ripples in water. Marina Castellane. The name they knew from business journals and architecture magazines. The woman who'd revolutionized luxury hospitality. The invisible titan. My mother grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. How long? Her voice was barely audible. How long have you been hiding this? I haven't been hiding anything, I said, gently removing her hand. I've been building something. There's a difference. But you let us think, you said you were barely getting by. No. I said I was managing a small hotel. Then several hotels. Then a hotel group. You heard what you wanted to hear. Claudia was shaking her head, her lawyer's mind trying to find the flaw in the logic. This doesn't make sense. When you left the firm, you had nothing. Dad cut you off. You were living in that terrible studio apartment. I was 24, I said. I took a job as a night manager at a boutique hotel in Brooklyn. Worked double shifts. Saved everything. 2 years later, I bought my first property with a group of investors. It was a disaster, nearly bankrupt. I turned it around in 18 months, sold it for triple what we paid, and used that money to buy 2 more properties. Then 4. Then 10. Why didn't you tell us? My mother demanded. We could have helped. Your father would have been proud. Would he? The question came out sharper than I intended. Would he have been proud of me, or proud of my bank account? The truth of it hung in the air between us. If you're enjoying this story and want to hear more about family dynamics, betrayal, and ultimate redemption, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that like button. Trust me, what happens next is going to blow your mind. And drop a comment below telling me what you would do if you were in Marina's position. Now, back to the story. My mother's face crumpled. Marina, that's not fair. Isn't it? When I told you I wanted to study hospitality management instead of law, Dad said I was throwing my life away. When I took that night manager job, you told your friends I was finding myself. When I bought my first hotel, you didn't even ask about it. You assumed it was some rundown motel and changed the subject. We didn't know, Claudia said weakly. You didn't ask. There's a difference. Marcos touched my elbow gently. Ms. Castellane, whenever you're ready. I nodded. The crowd parted as we moved toward the elevator. My family followed, silent now, stripped of their certainty. In the elevator's mirrored walls, I could see all of us reflected. My mother, still beautiful at 63, but smaller somehow than I remembered. Claudia, her perfect makeup unable to hide the shock in her eyes. Julian, running calculations I could almost see in his expression. And me, calm and collected, finally visible after years of being unseen. The elevator rose smoothly, 42 floors in near silence. When the doors opened onto the glass pavilion, the party was in full swing. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline like a jewel box. Crystal chandeliers I'd designed myself caught the light from 100 candles. A string quartet played near the bar, their music floating over the murmur of conversation. And there, in the center of it all, stood my father. Victor Castellane at 65 looked exactly like what he was. A successful patent attorney, who'd built a comfortable life through intellect and discipline. Silver hair, sharp eyes, the bearing of a man who'd never questioned his own authority. He was talking to a group of colleagues when he saw me, and his expression shifted through confusion to recognition to something I couldn't quite name. The room fell silent as people noticed us. As they noticed me. Marina. My father's voice carried across the space. What are you, Diana, what's happening? My mother moved to his side, her voice barely a whisper. She owns this hotel, Victor. She owns all of it. I watched him process this, watched the gears turning behind his eyes. Victor Castellane had made a career out of analyzing problems, finding solutions, protecting intellectual property. But he'd never been able to see what was right in front of him. Is this true? He asked me directly. I walked toward him, aware of every eye in the room following me. Andre, the maître d', materialized at my elbow with a menu. Miss Castellane, shall I begin serving the tasting menu? Please, I said. Then, to my father, happy 65th birthday, Dad. I had Andre prepare your favorite menu. The 7-course tasting with wine pairings. My gift. My father took the menu with shaking hands, scanning the descriptions. Butter poached lobster. Wagyu beef with truffle reduction. Courses I'd designed with our Michelin-starred chef over months of consultation, each one built around flavors I remembered him loving. You designed this menu. His voice was hoarse. I designed this room. This entire floor. The pavilion was my concept when I renovated the building 6 years ago. I wanted a space worthy of important celebrations. I paused. Like milestone birthdays. The weight of that hung between us. 6 years ago, he'd missed my 30th birthday. Said he was too busy with a case. I'd spent it alone in a hotel room in Singapore, negotiating my 12th acquisition. Marina, I don't understand. When you left the firm, you had nothing. You were living paycheck to paycheck. How did you? I built it, I said simply. The same way you built your practice. One client at a time. One case at a time. Except I built hotels. One property at a time. One renovation at a time. One impossible dream at a time. Patricia Whitmore had her phone out, not even trying to be subtle about recording this. I didn't care. Let her write her story. Let the world know that Victor Castellane's daughter, the one he dismissed as a failure, had built an empire under his nose. Why didn't you tell us? My father asked, and there was something raw in his voice I'd never heard before. Would it have mattered? Of course it would have. When I bought my first hotel, I called you. Remember? I was so excited. I wanted to tell you everything. You said you were busy with a case and you'd call me back. You never did. I watched him remember. Watched the realization hit him like a physical blow. When I opened my third property, I invited you to the launch party. You said you couldn't take time off work. When I won my first hospitality design award, I sent you the press release. You never acknowledged it. I thought they were small accomplishments, he said quietly. I thought you were struggling. I was struggling. But I was also succeeding. And you never looked closely enough to see the difference. Claudia stepped forward, her voice defensive. That's not fair, Marina. You never told us the scope of what you were doing. You never said you were this successful. Would you have believed me if I had? I turned to face her. When I showed up to Christmas dinner 3 years ago, I mentioned I'd just closed a deal in Barcelona. You laughed and asked if it was a timeshare. When I said I was expanding internationally, Mom said I should be careful not to overextend myself. Like I was a child playing business, not a woman running a multi-million-dollar company. The truth of it silenced her. You saw what you expected to see, I continued. The daughter who disappointed you. The black sheep who chose the wrong path. And I let you, because at a certain point, it stopped mattering what you thought. I had investors who believed in me. Partners who trusted my vision. Employees who built something incredible alongside me. I didn't need your approval anymore. My father looked like I'd struck him. Then why are you here? If you don't need us, why come tonight? It was the question I'd been asking myself all day. Why subject myself to this? Why reveal the truth after years of letting them believe a lie? Because you're still my father, I said quietly. And some small part of me still hoped that maybe, just maybe, you could be proud of me for who I am, not what I've achieved. The room was silent except for the string quartet, still playing softly near the bar. Someone coughed. A glass clinked. The city spread out below us, indifferent to family drama, to reconciliation or ruin. Victor Castellane looked at me for a long moment. Then he set down the menu and gestured toward the terrace. Can we talk? Privately? I nodded. The terrace was smaller than the main room, an intimate space with sculptural topiaries and heated lamps that cast a warm glow against the cooling night. The city stretched out below us, a million lights marking a million lives, a million stories, a million moments of triumph and failure and everything in between. My father stood at the railing, not looking at me. When you left the firm, I thought you were throwing your life away. I know. I said terrible things. About ambition. About your intelligence. About your future. You said I'd be serving drinks to people better than me for the rest of my life. I remembered it word for word. Remembered the way he'd said it, dismissive and certain, like he was stating an obvious truth. He flinched. I was wrong. Yes. The silence stretched between us, vast and complicated. Can you forgive me? He asked. I'd thought about this question 1,000 times. Rehearsed answers in my head during sleepless nights and long flights across oceans. I'd imagined this conversation playing out in a dozen different ways. But now, standing here with my father's question hanging in the air, I realized there was only one honest answer. No, I said. But I don't need to forgive you to move forward. He turned to face me, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Tears in Victor Castellane's eyes. What I need, I continued, is your respect. Not for my money. Not for my properties. Not for my success. But for me. The daughter who chose a different path and succeeded anyway. The woman who knew what she wanted and built it with her own hands. You have it, he said immediately. Do I? Or do I have your belated recognition now that my success is too big to ignore? The distinction seemed to hit him hard. There's a difference, I said gently, between being proud of someone's achievements and respecting their choices. You're proud of what I've accomplished. I can see it in your face. But would you have respected my decision to pursue hospitality if I'd failed? If I was actually that struggling restaurant manager you thought I was, would you look at me with anything other than disappointment? He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. That's what I needed 12 years ago, I said. When I was 24 and terrified and sleeping on an air mattress in Brooklyn. When I was working 100-hour weeks and living on ramen noodles and cold pizza, because every spare dollar went into my business plan. When I was facing investors and bank loan officers, who looked at me like I was crazy for thinking I could renovate a failing hotel. That's when I needed you to believe in me. To respect my vision even if you didn't understand it. To trust that your daughter had inherited your intelligence, your work ethic, your ability to build something from nothing. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know you are. But sorry doesn't erase 12 years, Dad. It doesn't give me back the holidays I spent alone because I wasn't welcome at family gatherings. It doesn't undo the shame you made me feel for choosing my own path. It doesn't fix the fact that you couldn't see my worth until I had a Forbes profile. He gripped the railing like it was the only thing keeping him upright. What do you want from me? It was the most vulnerable I'd ever seen him. Victor Castellane, the man who'd built a legal practice on his ability to argue and persuade and win, asking his daughter what she needed. Belief, I said. I wanted you to believe in me when I had nothing. Now that I have everything, your pride means less. But your respect, your acknowledgement that I was worth believing in, that might mean something. You were always worth believing in. Then why didn't you? The question hung between us like a bridge that might lead somewhere, or might collapse entirely. Before he could answer, the terrace door opened. Claudia stood there, uncertain. Dad, they're about to serve the first course. Marina, she stopped, looking between us. Should I come back? No, I said. We should go in. My father caught my arm as I moved past. Marina, please. Tell me how to fix this. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw an old man confronting his failures. It didn't erase the hurt. Didn't make the years of rejection disappear. But it was something. You can't fix it, I said. But maybe we can build something new. If you're willing to actually see me. Not the version of me you expected, or the one you're proud of now. Just me. He nodded, unable to speak. Back in the main room, Andre had begun serving the first course. Oysters on the half-shell with champagne mignonette, each one perfect, each one representing the attention to detail I'd built my reputation on. Guests were seated now, the party settling into the rhythm of a formal dinner. I found my seat at the family table, directly across from my father. My mother sat to his right, her makeup slightly smeared from crying. Claudia and Julian were to my left, both looking like they'd been through a war. The oysters arrived. My father picked up one, examining it like it held answers. "These are from Prince Edward Island," he said quietly. "My favorite." "I know. You remembered." "I remember everything, Dad. That's the problem. If you're still watching, thank you for being here through this emotional journey. Make sure you're subscribed because stories like this, stories about real human complexity and family dynamics, are what this channel is all about. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now let's see how this night ends. The dinner progressed through its courses. Butter poached lobster with saffron aioli. Duck breast with cherry gastrique. Each dish was met with appreciative murmurs from the guests, with compliments directed at me, the architect of the evening. Patricia Whitmore asked me questions about my design philosophy, about my expansion plans, about the rumors of a Castellane property opening in Dubai next year. I answered smoothly, professionally, the CEO version of myself that I wore like armor. But across the table, I watched my family. Watched my mother try to reconcile the daughter she'd dismissed with the woman the room treated like royalty. Watched Claudia process the fact that her little sister, the family embarrassment, owned the building where she practiced law. Watched Julian do mental calculations about how his bank's acquisition by my company would affect his career. And I watched my father, who barely touched his food, his eyes never leaving my face. When the main course was cleared, he stood. Tapped his wine glass with a fork until the room quieted. "I'd like to make a toast," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "To my daughter Marina." The room went silent. "I've spent 12 years believing she'd failed," he continued. "I was the one who failed. She built an empire I never saw because I refused to look. She succeeded beyond anything I could have imagined, and she did it without my support, without my belief, without my respect. Marina, you are extraordinary. And I'm sorry it took me this long to see it." He raised his glass. The room followed suit. "To Marina, the architect of her own fortune." I stood, raising my own glass, my throat tight with emotions I couldn't name. "Thank you, Dad." The applause was genuine, warm. People I didn't know celebrating a reconciliation they'd witnessed. But I knew the truth. This wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. It was a beginning. A possibility. After dessert, a lavender creme brulee with honeycomb that had guests actually sighing with pleasure, I presented my real gift. Sophie appeared with a leather portfolio. I took it, walked to my father, and handed it to him. "This is my actual gift," I said. "Not the party. Not the dinner." He opened it slowly. Inside was a deed. His hands trembled as he read it. "What is this?" "The villa in Provence. The one you and Mom rented for your 30th anniversary. You said it was the one place you'd felt truly at peace. I bought it 3 years ago. It's yours now." My mother gasped, reading over his shoulder. "Marina, this property is worth millions." "Worth is relative, Mother. To me, it's worth seeing Dad somewhere he loves. Somewhere he might think kindly of the daughter who remembered." My father pulled out a photograph tucked into the portfolio. It was old, faded at the edges. Our family at that villa, 28 years ago. I was 8 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, wearing a sundress and holding a bouquet of lavender. My father had his arm around my shoulders. We looked happy. "You kept this?" he asked. "I kept everything that mattered." He stood, and for the first time since I was a child, my father hugged me. Really hugged me. And I let him, even though part of me wanted to pull away, wanted to protect myself from hoping for too much. "I love you," he whispered against my hair. "I've always loved you. I just couldn't see past my own expectations to show you." "I know," I said. Because I did. Love had never been the question. Respect had. When we separated, Claudia was standing beside us, her eyes red. Marina, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything tonight. I was cruel. 4 years. I was so cruel to you. Yes, I agreed. You were. She flinched, but I continued. But if you want to know me, actually know me, my office hours are Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Sophie will put you on the calendar. Just like that. After everything I said. Not just like that. It'll take time. But I'm not interested in cutting family off forever. I'm interested in building something real. If you are too. She nodded, unable to speak. The party wound down slowly. Guests departed with effusive thanks, with business cards pressed into my hand, with invitations to lunches and galas and charity events. My parents stood at the door with me, a united front that felt strange and fragile and somehow right. When the last guest left, it was just family. My father, my mother, Claudia, Julian, and me. Stay, my mother said suddenly. Have a drink with us. Please. I looked at my watch. Nearly midnight. I had a conference call with investors in Tokyo in 7 hours. But looking at my mother's face, seeing genuine hope there for the first time in over a decade, I nodded. We sat in the empty pavilion, just the 5 of us, with the city lights spread below us like a promise. Andre brought us wine, the good vintage I kept in the private cellar. We didn't talk about business or money or the past. We talked about small things. Safe things. The weather. Travel plans. Claudia's upcoming vacation. But it was something. A start. At 1 in the morning, I stood to leave. Marcos appeared like magic, ready to escort me down. I'll call you this week, my father said. If that's all right. I'd like that. In the elevator, Marcos smiled. That went well. Did it? You told them the truth. They listened. That's more than most families manage. What if it's not enough? Then it's not. But at least you tried. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby, now quiet and serene. The night manager nodded to me. The security guard smiled. My hotel, my staff, my empire built in silence and revealed in fire. My car was waiting outside. But before I got in, I turned back to look at the meridian. 42 stories of glass and steel and vision. My vision. My proof that I'd been right to believe in myself even when no one else did. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. How did it go? I'm not sure yet, I typed back. But I think maybe it went exactly how it needed to. Another text appeared. This one from my father. Just 3 words. I'm proud, Marina. I stared at it for a long moment. 3 words I'd waited 12 years to hear. 3 words that meant less now than they would have then, but still meant something. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because proud wasn't enough. Proud was about achievement. I needed him to understand that I would have been worth loving even if I'd failed. That my value wasn't in my portfolio, or my properties, or my Forbes profile. It was in the little girl who'd picked lavender in Provence and dreamed of beautiful spaces where people felt safe and seen. That's who I'd been fighting for all along. Not the CEO. Not the titan. The 8-year-old in the photograph who believed in beauty and possibility and second chances. I got in the car and headed home, back to my penthouse where architectural plans for Monaco waited on my desk. Tomorrow I'd return to being Marina Castellane, hospitality magnate. But tonight, I'd been someone simpler. A daughter. A sister. A woman who'd fought for her place at the table and finally, painfully, earned it. The city blurred past my window, a million lights in the darkness. Each one a story. Each one a struggle. Each one proof that we are all just trying to be seen, to be valued, to matter to the people who should have loved us all along. I'd built an empire to prove I mattered. But maybe what I'd really built was the courage to demand what I deserved. Not forgiveness. Not even reconciliation. Just respect. And in the end, that was the only architecture that mattered. The structure we build inside ourselves, strong enough to withstand rejection, brave enough to remain open to hope, wise enough to know the difference between what we need and what we can accept. The car pulled up to my building. The doorman opened my door. I stepped out into the night air, breathing in the smell of the city I'd conquered, the empire I'd built, the life I'd chosen. And for the first time in 12 years, I felt something close to peace. Not because my family had finally seen me, but because I'd seen myself clearly all along. And that, in the end, was the only validation that had ever really mattered. If this story moved you, if Marina's journey resonated with your own experiences of being underestimated or dismissed, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And please, subscribe to this channel for more stories about resilience, redemption, and the courage it takes to build the life you deserve. Thank you for listening.